Welcome everybody, I'm Misty Beryle, the owner of Mindful Living Wellness Center here in Salt Lake City, Utah. A place to bring intentional healing and balance through physical, mental, and emotional care. Our goal is to help you in your journey through education of self-sustaining tools, practicing talk therapy, life coaching, emotional wellness, mindful yoga, and all varieties of healing and wellness. Our purpose for these podcasts are to share information about staying well, however that may look like for you, our listener. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Mindful Moment. Welcome everybody to our third podcast from Mindful Living Wellness Center. I'm Misty Beryle. I am the owner of Mindful Living Wellness Center here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And today we're going to speak again with Kelli Jacobsen, one of our own therapists. And we're going to talk about routines and how it affects mental health. With the current global pandemic, COVID-19, many of our routines have been turned upside down. Today, we're going to be talking about how the importance of that routine affects our mental health and how to incorporate routines into our daily life if you don't already have one or if you have a routine that's been disrupted. Disclaimer, the information in this podcast should not be relied on as substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are suffering from any mental health issues, we recommend that you seek medical advice before using these resources. We make no warranties that this information is correct, complete, or reliable, or suitable for any purpose.
So good morning, Misty. It's nice to be here again talking about something I think is really important, especially, I think it's important normally, but especially in the situation that we're in. So there's actually a lot of science supporting the connection between routines and mental health. Even before the pandemic, in the mental health field, establishing a consistent routine is something that's often talked about in therapy sessions as a way to improve symptoms of depression, anxiety, and lots of other mental health conditions, to include like addiction recovery. The reason behind this is that when we organize ourselves and know what to expect, it's easier to actively work towards counteracting the thoughts and symptoms of some of those mental health issues like anxiety and depression.
So it sounds like there's actually evidence that shows routines can decrease mental health symptoms like anxiety. Can you give me an example of how the routine does this?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take anxiety, for example. Anxiety is really like excessive worry. So right now in particular, as we talked about in our first podcast, the world is very unpredictable, which creates a lot of worry in people. There's so many things happening right now that are out of our control. However, what we do have control over is ourselves. So one way to combat worry is to have a routine that you can count on, that is predictable when so much of what is happening in our world is now unpredictable.
I definitely find that when I'm not actively following a routine, I feel less productive. Like I'm falling behind or I'm lacking in something, and find myself getting frustrated at minor things. Like the other day, in which kind of spurred the whole reason for this podcast, I was just finding myself getting really frustrated with my day and finding things that really bothered me. And I kept having the thought of, I need to do this. And it was those basic routine things that I didn't have to do because I was just home, working from home. It just, like you said, it disrupted the normal routine. And so I found myself kind of struggling, I guess you could say. So I'm seeing this in my life and I'm wondering, how can a routine help with stress? So like I see it, but I don't know why. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. Like a lot of us have shifted to working from home. And so that creates just a whole new balancing act of routine. Like, you know, I'm at my desk working, and then I also know I have all this laundry and I have kids that need my help, and the dogs, you know, are begging me to go for a walk. Where normally I'm at the office, those things are there, but I don't see them, so I'm not necessarily thinking about them. And so like you, I've really been challenged with how do I feel like because it's there and I can see it, like I have to attend to it right then. And so, yeah, that creates a lot of stress. And so kind of like you, I've had to relook at my routines because having a routine does alleviate stress. Creating routines allows you to sort of set specific tasks and allow you to set times for other things like fun or things you enjoy that make you happy. And if these things are a part of your daily routine, then your brain will begin to adapt, knowing that fun part is the rewarding element to get you through the things that would usually stress you. And it also, I think, helps you organize your time. So it's like, okay, I know that laundry's there, but in 10 minutes, I can focus on that, and now I'll do this.
Okay, so it's almost allowing myself to, if I'm understanding correctly, it's allowing myself to approach this task knowing that this other task is going to be accomplished, and so therefore I'm not stressing. And so before, like when I just was kind of going on my own, I was feeling that stress of, okay, I know this needs to be done, this needs to be done, but there was no organization in it. Mm-hmm. So that lack of organization, i.e. lack of routine, is what essentially is causing that stress.
Exactly. I mean, that's what anxiety is. It's just worry about stuff. And so one way we can step out of worry is setting, like making your to-do list or making your routine list, because okay, I see that laundry, it's over here. Right now I'm working on work, but I know at 4:00 is laundry time. And so now I can not worry about that and know that I will get to it later.
You can literally put it on the shelf, like we spoke about in that
Yeah,
podcast.
exactly.
You put that on the shelf. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I know how important it is in my life as an adult, and I feel like I somewhat have it together. I've matured. I'm not a child anymore. But tell me how the lack of routine or the routine is important in children's mental health.
Routine is something historically that's always been talked about as being important for children. There's a lot of research that tells us, for children in particular, that routines help to moderate impulsiveness, like just acting without thinking, and oppositional symptoms in children. And the reason behind that is that routines sort of protect and help children feel safer because they know what to expect. So it's like routine, when things are really unpredictable and kids never know what to expect, it's really hard for them to self-regulate. So having a routine and knowing, here's what I know is going to happen, throughout my day, helps them feel safer.
And this sounds like it's all subconscious. Like this isn't something that you consciously actively think about. Like, right. Oh, I feel really good that I have a time set for maybe an adult you might, but especially for children, it's things that just happen subconsciously. The fact that they can rely on that routine brings them safety.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some ways to actually incorporate these routine into our daily lives. Because this is exciting to feel like a little bit of safety. Like, okay, I can wrap around this routine. And I just want to know, the other day I had the recognition, okay, I'm going to have a routine. I kind of had that realization, like I said, that I needed a routine and to get into it. So I said it. I was excited. I even posted about it on my social media. And the very next day, I literally rebelled. I'm like, I don't want to wash my face. And guess what? I'm not going to brush my teeth. I know that sounds awful, but I literally am just like, I'm just going to work. It's okay. I'm in the mode. I'm just going to go for it. And I didn't stop to take care of myself or to follow that routine. And again, I found myself in a frustration cycle. Yeah. And so I guess my point is, all right, I know I need a routine. I even have a routine. Yeah. How can I incorporate this?
Yeah. So I think you bring up kind of 2 points, which is like, how do I come up with a routine and develop a routine, but also how do I stay motivated to it? Because I have a history of coming up with lots of routines and not always being successful at sticking to them, even though I know I feel better when I do. So let's speak to the first part of what you're talking about, which is just maybe how to incorporate a routine. So I think a couple ways people could think about coming up with a routine is to think about it in terms of different aspects or levels. So like on a personal level, a relationship level, or a professional level. So we have kind of these, I like to think, I don't know if you've seen that wheel of life where it's like a circle and it's divided into pie charts of like, here's my personal life, my relationships, my professional life, my leisure and, recreation. And so to think about it in terms of, different levels or categories. So for example, on a personal level, maybe think about the activities you engage in on a daily basis. This could mean sort of like if you're a coffee drinker, that's something I enjoy every day. So giving yourself 15 to 20 minutes a day to enjoy your cup of coffee while also watching like your favorite talk show. Like, what do I enjoy doing on a personal level, and how do I incorporate that into my routine? So that could be, carving out your 30 minutes for exercise, making time to eat healthy, just whatever it is on a personal level, the things that you enjoy.
Could it be in the evening as well for that personal time? Not just necessarily morning, but say something you do right before bed. I know I struggle with my nighttime routine.
Yeah.
And I feel like that'd be something that would get me more in the, okay, I'm ready for bed now. I've done A, B, C, and D, and so now my body's ready.
Yeah.
I've been struggling with sleep lately, I'm not going to lie. And so I'm just like, what am I doing wrong? Maybe all the stress of what's going on.
And the routines are excellent for sleep, by the way. A lot of cognitive behavioral therapists, who address like insomnia and sleep issues really, really talk about the importance of routine. And so, so not only like the way I think about it is these different levels, like personal levels, but then how do I incorporate that throughout the day? So in the nighttime, during the day. So exactly. Another sort of level or category you might think about developing a routine is career or work. So like I talked about, now that I'm working from home, it's been really hard to like balance working and also helping with kids with homework, with my own workload. And so like we talked about, just the challenges of seeing that everything that needs to be done, which I normally wouldn't see if I was at work, trying to balance that. So partly is thinking about, okay, part of my routine is I have these tasks for work. So how can I break up my day? Like I fortunately had the ability to say, I'm dedicating the first 2 hours of my day to helping my kids with homework, and I'm not going to work, and that might not work for everybody, but this is what I've had to do is say, I'm here so I can answer questions. And then I'm going to move on with my day is you continue your homework. If you run into any problems, do the best you can, and then I'll come back to you at the end of the day and I'll help you with anything you got stuck on.
And you feel good about that because you spent that time with them, so you're not feeling neglectful of them. It's like, no, this is your time to focus on it.
Yeah.
Come back to the questions.
Yeah, because what happened is I sort of put it on my kids to be like, you know what your homework is, you do it. And I found out, like, after a week, my son was not doing any of this work. And so not only have I had to come up with a routine, but helping him establish a routine to manage his workload, because he's not at school having someone say, you go to this class, you do this, you go to this class, you do this. It's overwhelming for kids.
Talk about routines being disrupted. The children, I'm sure, have had quite the disruption. Well, on a career level, I was just speaking with my fiance about this, and we talked about boundaries because he was curious if he had certain emails or whatever, and it was still our coffee time. We were trying to set our routine of our coffee time. Yeah. And he pulled up his laptop, and so we had this conversation of, at what point do you, at the end of the day, feel like, well, I started working at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I mean, maybe your normal day starts at 9 but to make yourself follow your own boundaries with working at home so that you're not bringing work into home, even though we're working from home.
You bring up an excellent point, and that was actually on one of my things to hit, because part of that, career work routine is like having a strict schedule. So like when the workday is over, turning off your phone, putting away the email and not looking at it, because this is time for your kids. Because that's part of what I found myself running into the first week when kids were at home and I was at home. I was working, all through the day and into the evening, and I was
burn out.
And and my kids were like, "What the heck, Mom?" And so we've really had to work on setting a strict schedule. Like, I'm done at this time. This is when I'm working. And then part of that is communicating to the people, having good communication with the people you work with.
Setting clear expectations.
Like emailing your coworkers and saying, here's the times, my chunks of times I'm available today. If you send me an email during this time, I'll respond at this time. Because I also know that my other coworkers are struggling with the same sort of like, how do I juggle all of these things? So a couple other things that I might suggest too is like, changing out of your pajamas in the morning, if
literally setting the difference between I'm home and now I'm working.
Yeah, because I found myself, I don't know about you, the first week or so, like not really changing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And like I would have for conference calls, like the business shirt. But if you looked at the bottom, like who knows what I was wearing. But I found like there was such a difference in the way I approached my work when I was actually like got up, took a shower, and was dressed and ready for the day. I don't know.
That's proven.
Yeah.
I've heard many studies on that. In fact, going way back, when I was in college, I remember there being a study that came out to encourage us college students to dress up for our tests. They're like, they did studies where the students that were in their pajamas, because it was kind of a big thing back in the 90s to wear your pajamas to school.
That's true.
This isn't new, guys. Wearing pajamas in public. No, I'm just kidding. So the students that wore their pajamas or their leisurely type clothes to take their test, and the students that dressed up, took time, made themselves presentable, they performed better. Now, I don't have all the details of the actual test, but just kind of referencing the fact that I know tests have been done in this, it proves that and we even had a colleague tell us the other day about the book that was written of, I apologize, I don't have the correct reference, but basically the same idea, those who took care of themselves and made themselves more presentable, performed better.
Yeah, I think I think like to use a metaphor, it's like showing up for game day without your uniform. Like,
ooh, very good.
Like I imagine it has some similar like psychological effect, just like I'm ready to go. Okay, so in terms of, just that career work level, so getting ready for the day, having a dedicated workspace, I don't think we hit on that. Like at first I was like in the bedroom on my bed all day, and I was like, okay, this is not going to work. Like,
same.
Like I actually need to get out of bed and to a space where I feel like I'm going to work, having that strict schedule. So I'm working these hours, and then this hour is when I'll do that, because I have a tendency to just get distracted by lots of things. And so I'm only like half doing like 10 things versus like actually completing one thing and moving on. So I have my task list where I say I'm going to do this from this hour to this hour, and that helps me a lot.
Well, I have to admit, I was really excited when I could just hang out on my couch and work on my computer and whatnot. And like you said, just that first week kind of did that. Totally susceptible to those distractions. Yeah. And so I found at the end of that week is when I decided to set this specific space for my little office, quote unquote. I went down to the basement, a more boring space, I felt like, but I am able to focus so much more on the intention that I had for, whatever I'm working on. And so I would agree.
Right. And then the last, you kind of hit on something else, which is the motivation part. So I've come up with this routine, like I've incorporated things that are important to me, like, exercise, time with the kids, my work schedule. But like now, how do I stay motivated in following through? Right. So this is something that I struggle with, especially like part of my day is I want to make sure I have time for meditation. And that seems hard sometimes to want to get up right out of bed and do that in the morning, which I find I'm more successful if I do that, but I'm also way less motivated. So one thing that helps me is if I have an accountability partner, like somebody who's also shares that same goal. And so even though we can't be together because of social distancing, it's like sending a text like, hey, I'm getting up to meditate. The other person will be like, oh, I'm tired, I don't feel like it. And then like the other person reminding like, hey, remember, here's the benefits and the reasons why you said you wanted to do this. Right. And I'm like, oh, crap, okay. I'll do it. And the same, it's like when I've been in, like running, I've had a running partner before. And it's really hard for me to just get right out of bed and start doing something. I need like a little warm-up time. Mm-hmm. But so having a partner that's like, oh, I know I got to be outside at 6 a.m. or I'm going to leave them hanging, like that's a huge motivator for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I find that, like you've spoken before, the cognitive aspect of setting goals and following through, having these routines. In my personal life, as I've set my expectation for myself. When I follow through, I feel so good. It's part of that routine. I'm like, I feel good. I've almost like given myself this belief. And so therefore the next task that I have, I'm like, I got this. where if I don't follow through with that set expectation that I set for myself, then it's like the day kind of lags and then it falls into that frustration cycle. And so it's interesting that both the routine and the follow through of goal kind of plays hand in hand, it seems like, to where, like this morning, I knew I wanted to go for a walk/run. I'm trying to work up to run because there's no gym, so I've got to get my cardio in somehow. And I knew I was laying in bed wanting to get up, and I knew if I didn't get up, I would be so upset with myself because I had set that goal for myself. Yeah. Now, it's not that like I have to run or I have to do this walk or routine every day, but it's because I set it for myself. Yes. So, and I think this is going to kind of delve into maybe other things we can continue on another podcast, but feeling like set reasonable expectations, maybe reasonable routines. Like we can write down the most amazing routine. We can cut and paste an amazing routine, but it's, if you can follow through with it, is part of the success, the feelings, that cognitive, like feeling good about yourself. Yeah. So maybe starting with a small routine will help us follow through with it, so that we're not setting these huge expectations of this nice, perfect routine. And then when you fall short, you just beat yourself up and then you're frustrated. So
you bring up an excellent point. So maybe part of like scheduling your routine is like, maybe you can list out in the ideal world, here's all the things I would like to do, but now what's realistic? And maybe routine, there's some parts of it that stay the same every day, but maybe other parts that are a little flexible. So, if I'm blocking out my time, I'm going to do the first 2 hours of homework with my kids. The next 3 hours, I'm going to work. And then lunchtime, I'm going to eat. And then I have these options of things that are important to me.
And then you don't feel too restricted or something.
Yeah, like because if I decide to do something else because I feel differently that day, then I can do that.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. I feel more confident and excited to set those reasonable expectations, those really simple routines that I can follow. And then as I master them, add a little bit more to it or whatnot.
You build confidence and self-efficacy. Yeah, absolutely.
And I love the idea of accountability. I think that's great to include somebody in your goals so that, and it might not always be your partner. It might not always be someone in your household. It could, like you said, it's someone that you could shoot a text to or do a FaceTime with or whatever your means of communication.
Yeah. Like if you know that you have a friend who has like some similar goals that they want to accomplish, like, a 6-week, for me, my exercise routine, oddly enough, I had a pretty solid routine and it's been thrown off, which doesn't make any sense to me because I'm home all the time. You'd think I would be getting it all in. But I was like, okay, I got to get back, again, it goes back to just trying to juggle all of those things. Before I had the set routine, I had to be to work at this time. I had to pick up kids at this time. And so, but now that's kind of left up to me.
I know it's easy to make excuses or veer this way or that way.
I'm not successful. So, yeah.
Boy, we're going to be master accountability people as soon as this is all over.
Right. But I'm like, I need someone to do like accountability, like fitness or something. So that's on my to-do list of setting my structure.
That's awesome. Yeah. Goals are great. And I think as we've talked about, setting the routine, setting some goals, making them realistic so that you can follow through with them really seems to be the key. So as we've talked about routines and following how it basically helps your mental health and whatnot, hopefully you can go forward and you as listeners can set some realistic routines and goals to help you through your day. And we spoke last week on our podcast about how to stay connected. I mean, not that it's a go-to all, you're going to be totally wise on how to stay connected, but it was just some fun references on basically keeping a community during all of this. And so reference that, you guys, if you want to find some ways or be able to connect with other people and find accountability partners and stuff like that.
But, incorporate that into your daily routine.
Yes, I love it. Well, Kelli, thank you so much for being with us today. And as always, you guys have a mindful week.